There are some movies that are very much of their time. And then there are movies that somehow end up being about time itself. Timecop is both. On the surface, it's a classic 90s action film. Jean-Claude Van Damme at his peak, high concept sci fi, big swings, even bigger kicks, and that leg thing that he does. But underneath all of that, it's asking some surprisingly enduring questions about power, about corruption, and about what happens when we start to believe that we can control the past without consequence. Because once time becomes something you can police, manipulate, or profit from, who gets to decide who stays the same and what gets rewritten? Joining me for this conversation are reckoning stalwarts and my great friends, historians Robert Greene II and John Wyatt Greenlee. And as always, they bring the perfect mix of historical perspective, sharp analysis. You know what? I just love the guys, and they came on. I wrote the other stuff and it sounded nice, but this is who they are. So today, we're talking about Timecop, what it tells us about the 1990s, about the politics of the moment, and why, for all its explosions and split kicks, it gives us something real to think about. I'm Jason Herbert, and this is A Reckoning. My name is Jason Herbert. I'm a Southerner who lives in the West. I'm a historian, an outdoorsman, and a movie buff. I like finding new answers to old questions, and this is A Reckoning. We have what is truly an intercontinental affair. We've got Eastern Standard Time and we've got Pacific Time represented here on this podcast tonight. And then Mountain Time, me and 12 other people who live in the rock. That may be the hardest thing about being out here is living on Mountain Time. It's so hard to schedule anything around Mountain Time. You know, it's tough. So
hey, those three people in Wyoming matter, man.
They do, I'm sure, to someone. And I'm not really worried about alienating what's Wyoming? What's their motto? Do they have like a big, like Montana's big sky state? Do we know what Wyoming is? The Cheney state?
I don't
I hope not.
It's something. I mean, it's like it's the north of Colorado state. It's like we're not Montana state. Like keep going if you want to get to Yellowstone. I mean, there's a lot of. Actually, most of Yellowstone's in Wyoming. Right? Diet Montana.
Yeah,
right. 0 calorie Montana is the new Wyoming advertisement.
I actually just looked it up. Their motto is equal rights.
Yes, because they were the first. I think Wyoming was the first state to have women have the right to vote.
Right.
Utah, where I grew up, was the first territory, I think. Because
isn't that amazing? Like,
because the Mormons realized that like there were non-Mormons moving into the state, and they could basically double their voting power by having by extending the franchise.
Okay.
But then when they became a state, they didn't keep it, and so Wyoming got to be there first, and it's a sore point with Utah.
So, gentlemen, you're saying that bylines of who votes for who are an important part of the American story, and perhaps part of Timecop, is what you're saying.
It's a through line.
Tonight.
Yes.
It's a stretch. Okay, we're gonna get there tonight. There is new Jean-Claude Van Damme news breaking today as we speak, which is apparently they have greenlit a remake of Bloodsport.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know, Rob.
I mean, I'm not really emotionally attached to Bloodsport to begin with. It's a movie I've enjoyed, but I'm curious to see what they do with this because something tells me it's not going to just be a cash grab. It sounds like from who they have working on it, it's going to be a serious effort to make something unique.
I don't want it to be that way. I think what makes Bloodsport work is that it's crappy. It's like the kid who plays Frank Dukes is the single worst actor in the entire. I'm not talking about cinema. I'm talking about in all art firms, all the way down to like Japanese I'm talking about any kind of artistic dancing, the single worst ever. And we got to live in that time frame. He's the worst. Remember how they put him in like a Giants football jersey and a Giants baseball cap to like is he just into really tall mythical creatures? Like it's like the production value was so like somebody's like, oh, Giants, it's the same thing, even though the colors and logos are completely, it's so impossibly bad. You've got Forrest Whitaker in his very first film. Like, it's so, I mean, yeah, I love it. I'm all in. We need to do a Bloodsport pod.
I think this is the kind of film that even with a remake, the original will never be forgotten.
No, but I was just saying a little bit earlier, when they announced that they were going to remake Roadhouse, I was anti Roadhouse remake. But I got to tell you, I've started to enjoy the Jake Gyllenhaal version. If I just look at it as its own film without the Pat Swayze, Sam Elliott stuff, right, hanging over it, if I just go, this is what this is, it's kind of you can't make a direct thing, right? It's the reason why I actually think Predators actually works, because you can't try to remake Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can't do that character, right? So if you take Adrian Brody, and make him, make a lanky kind of a dude, he's cut, but he's not Schwarzenegger. I think the easiest thing to do would have been put Dolph Lundgren in. It's like, oh, here's another big guy. It doesn't work that way. You've got to, this guy's funnier, the Gyllenhaal character. He's funnier and kind of silly, and you kind of like some of the bad guys and stuff. So I don't know. Either way, I don't have a segue on this. So I was going to say, do you like some of the bad guys? And I do like Ron Silver, actually. He's so good. God, I miss Ron Silver. He was so good in The West Wing. Do you guys remember him when he was on The West Wing?
Him in The West Wing, yes.
He was so slimy and good at that. He's like, I'm just here to win. That's it. That's all I do. I just win. It's like, yeah, he's a great bad guy in this, I think. So, there's a lot to like. Timecop. Rob, you and I were just starting to hint at this off camera, that initially I think the idea on this was like, hey, let's get some guys together and we'll do one of the old school historians at the movies pods where we just wax poetic about movies and fighting and stuff like that. And then all three of us watched this and we were like, oh no. This
I gotta think about this thing. Come on, man. What are you doing to me?
This is something went horrible. I remember watching it going, oh Jesus, no, this isn't what I wanted at all. Because this movie is incredibly prescient, and it's scary how accurate and forecasting it is.
I mean, the thing about Timecop, when you first asked me to do this episode of your podcast, I thought, okay, this would be a fun thing to watch.
Hang out with our buddy.
We will be able to talk time travel and movies. I start watching it, and the next thing I know, there were several points in the film where I almost suffered whiplash. Just looking at the screen like, wait, what did they just say? A white supremacist party is winning votes for the presidency. I mean, the thing about Timecop is it's one of those science fiction films where so much of the backdrop alone is fascinating, where you want to just hear more about what's actually going on in that world beyond what you see on screen. But what makes Timecop so intriguing is that so much of what they're talking about on screen, we're actually living through in a lot of ways.
Kind of ruined the movie for me, Rob.
Right?
Yeah, I had the same sort of experience with a whole bunch of sort of taking notes through it, and a whole bunch of times like, oh man. Yeah, we're trying the thing where we elected a guy who's got so much money that he doesn't need to make any money, and he's not beholden to any interests. And like, yeah, you know what? That doesn't hold up actually. Like
this is such a Reagan era thing. It's like, if you get enough money, you'll start being nice to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's literally a line in the film where Ron Silver actually says, "I want to take us back to the '80s," which I think we'll get into this a bit later on, but when the film was made and released, right, is a really interesting time too, because it's tempting to say, oh, it predicts the 2020s, but it's really a reflection of the time in which it's made.
All films are, right? Absolutely. Right. So there is an incredible amount to to unpack in this film. And this is why I've really come to love both the watch parties that we've been doing for the last 8 years on Historians of the Movies and what this podcast does. It's like we can take a silly film, or at least what we think of as a silly film, like Timecop, and then we're sitting there going, oh, God, oh, wow. And there's so much to say if you just open your eyes to it. However, I want to keep us on track here. We're going to get into all this nitty gritty, all this stuff here. Do you remember the first time you saw? Let's take a step back in time, gentlemen. Do you remember the first time you saw this film? Like, what was your initial reaction to this? This film comes out, I think, in '94. What's your response to this film? How old were you? Where did you see it? Was it theater? Was it on HBO, VHS? What was your thing?
I was gonna say, I when I was watching it again, I was reflecting on that question, and I think the first time I saw it was when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I know it was on VHS; it wasn't in the theaters, and it was exactly right. The old days of Blockbuster, renting a film on the weekend, watching it as a kid, and just having a good time. But what I realized watching it again was that A, it had been a long time since I watched it, and B, there was just a lot I had forgotten about it. All I remember, the funny thing about Timecop is there were two things I remembered about this film. Number one, how slimy Ron Silver was. And number two, the opening scene where they're still in Confederate gold.
One of my favorite opening scenes ever.
I don't know why that scene has stuck with me for 30 years, but I remember that scene as a kid seeing it. And beyond that, it just felt like, oh, it's just a 90s action film. You got Jean-Claude Van Damme doing his thing. You got a wee bit of gratuitous sex scenes in here and that kind of stuff, which I had forgotten about too until I was watching it again. I was like, oh, this is probably the part of the film my dad's covering my eyes as I'm trying to watch it, right? But really what I remember more than anything else was just, oh, it's just another action movie. It as a kid, I did not catch most of the film's more serious plot points.
All right. So the first time I watched this film was about 4 hours ago.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah, no, I did not.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
As a kid. So you are in fact getting like my first reactions to it. So it came out in 94, right? Yeah. 94 is when I graduated from high school, went to college, and like I rented a ton of movies from Blockbuster when I was in high school, but like when I went to college, I kind of stopped doing that so much. And so I think I just missed the window for seeing it. And so it sort of fell into that category of films that I'm like, okay, I kind of know what it's about. It forms a part of the big tapestry background of my childhood and early adulthood, but I haven't actually seen it. So when you asked me, I was like, sweet. And then for a second, I thought maybe I forgot and thought that you had said Time Bandits. And then I got confused. And then I looked back at the email again and I was like, oh no, it's Timecop. But so although Time Bandits and Timecops, it's really interesting, like two sides of the coin. But I am about 4 hours into my Timecop experience.
Okay. I have thoughts on this, and I remember this. I don't think I saw it at the theater, but I very much even remember then. I see 94, I was a junior in high school. I was a year behind John Wyatt. And I remember even then, there was a clear positioning. Like we just talked about Bloodsport and Kickboxer and all these B films, Cyborg, that Van Damme. Can we do Cyborg? Can we go and book you guys for Cyborg, please? That's another one we're going to sit there and go, oh, God, no. Oh, this global virus. AI. Oh, Jesus, no. Right?
I should say that like this is absolutely the kind of movie that I would have watched the shit out of in high school. I just missed it.
Right, okay. But I remember there was like a clear position, like they were going to go, like this film, the production values on Timecop and marketing on Timecop were far above anything else. This was like the attempt to really push JCVD as mainstream action hero. I remember that specifically, and that still comes across. But the question here is this. Is this an 80s film or a 90s film? Because in so many ways, Rob, you mentioned this, I kind of feel like it's that transitional film because you don't need to see the gratuitous nudity in this film. And there's like two different sex scenes where doesn't need to be there. You know, it's like you've got breasts everywhere in like two different parts and it feels out of place because it's like, it feels like it's almost pulling the film down. Frankly, the nudity, it kind of pulls it down into the 80s. It's one of the hallmarks of like 80s action stuff, right? Anything with Carl Weathers, Action Jackson, right? You don't need it.
Well, and like the first sex scene, the major sex scene is like 4 minutes into the movie. Like,
yeah, I mean, that is correct.
It's like it starts, and you know, like I'm sitting there watching it, appreciating it, but also being like, oh, she's gonna die, because like there's no other reason to like start your movie out with like a gratuitous sex scene, unless like it's the only chance you've got to use the actor in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't feel necessarily that it brought the film down for me, but I can get on board with it making it feel very sort of 80s. I don't know. I felt like it was an 80s film in a lot of ways, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I well, first off, you're talking about gratuitous scenes. I think to be honest with you, as a young black kid growing up in 1990s Georgia, seeing the Confederates get shot up in the beginning of the film was my gratuitous, oh, this is awesome scene. But putting that to the side for a moment.
Go ahead.
Well, putting that to the side for a moment, I actually felt it was more of a 90s film. I'll put it this way. I don't want to split the difference here, but I think it was sort of an 80s action film in the sense of the plot. I mean, you've got an action movie with time travel, but it felt 90s in the sense that Jean-Claude Van Damme's character was married. And he has
a loving marriage.
Yeah, loving marriage. And like, it's unlike other action films where the fact that he's a loner is actually a tragic part of the story. That's not who he's supposed to be. And it's kind of playing with some of those action movie tropes of, oh, this guy actually is the loner cop, but he's not supposed to be.
Right. He goes home and watches videos of his late wife, which we see in Minority Report later on, right? It becomes a trope, right? Or
RoboCop. You know, I think it's sort of a callback to that too. Now that I think about it, but it's sort of, I think, trying to do an action hero that is, and again, these are action films, but a little bit more nuanced than what we're kind of used to.
Okay. 1994, all three of us are baby historians. We have no idea what the future holds for us. Can we talk about how awesome that opening scene is? Rob, you just talked about it. Like I live for that opening scene. That opening scene might be the single best part of the entire film, frankly. You know, it's so well done. Just the way the dude's talking to the dude is like, sure, you're asking you heavy that gold. I'm going to ask you one more time.
Where is my time travel film of a guy just shooting up Confederates for 2 hours? That's the movie I kind of want to see. That's fine. I mean, when I was a kid, and I remember when I was in seventh grade. Remember you take like world history in seventh grade, right? And my entry into like history was always like Greece, like Alexander the Great and all that stuff. But I would always fantasize. I'm like, all right, like who could conquer who if like some guy just zipped back with a few like M60s? Like how much modern tech would you need to conquer a phalanx, you know, or whatever? And it's kind of fun to play around with when you watch this film, thinking about what happens and of course the things that could happen as a result of it, you know. John, do you have any more thoughts on that opening scene when you watched it 4 hours ago?
For the first time. No,
you're going to go home and watch it again.
I thought it was really well done. I thought I was sort of expecting. So the character who stops them in the middle of the road is very obviously missing a tooth, right?
Yes.
And which at that point, I thought he was actually going to show up later in the movie, and like the missing tooth would be, it's sort of like
we never see him again, do we?
No, I thought it'd be kind of like Chekhov's missing tooth, where like you'd see it, like that would be the thing that later you'd be like, oh, it's that guy. That doesn't happen. I think he has a missing tooth because he's supposed to be part of like a Southern white nationalist movement.
No, because he's got healthcare in the United States in the 21st century.
Right. No, it's true. But no, I thought it was really well done. The interplay between them is really believable and well done. The only thing that struck me as really like, even within the context of the film, unbelievable about it was that like, not a single one of the horses is hurt. They all get up and like trot off at the end. Like
that's a very 80s, 90s thing, right? You can't kill horses.
I know you can't kill the horses, but like, because he pulls the two essentially like Uzis or whatever the version of it, and like, you know, guns down this group
incredibly
of Confederate
accurate
soldiers. Yes, super accurate, and like all the horses are like, huh. Well, guess we're leaving now.
That's how you know he's from the South. He cares about horses.
I was a little surprised. I'm not an Americanist. I was a little surprised that they were bringing gold to General Lee in Gainesville, Georgia. But what are you going to do?
So I think that because there's always been this legend of lost Confederate gold from the Civil War, and depending on which year you're talking about, and I think the Gainesville, Georgia thing was kind of weird.
Didn't wind up in like Africa in a
we did the Sahara pod without you, John.
Yeah, right. But I think even going back to that scene, as I was watching it again, I remember there was a novel that came out about 2 years before this film called Guns of the South. It's an alternate history novel. The Harry Turtle novel, where basically these white nationalists from South Africa go back in time and give the Confederate Army AK-47s to help them win the Civil War. And I don't think the producers of the film read that novel, but I do think it's interesting how the film begins with a take on the Civil War, and then the other in the past scene was in 1929. So I think what they're playing with in American history in the film is actually very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like there's also like these are things where if you're, say, unfamiliar with American history, maybe to a global audience or frankly to American audiences who we know are simply unfamiliar with American history, these are things people know, right? They know these big moments in American time, these checkpoints, American Civil War, right? Stock market crash.
And that's part of what's going on there too with like General Lee and Georgia, right? Like you're sort of it's the actual specifics of the geography are not important so much as like those are big flags for people who don't know the history. Is like you know who General Lee is, and you know that Georgia is in the South in a way that if you're like Virginia, you might be like maybe I don't know. Like it doesn't have the same sort of cultural resonance.
Can I tell you now? I'm starting to imagine Bo and Luke Duke in their General Lee going back in time to the Civil War and running shine in Georgia. I mean, that's a thought I've had, and not a good one. No, like we should never bring up Dukes of Hazzard ever again. I want to move on here. We've had Rob in some of our conversations about some of the other action films we've done here in the 80s. We've talked about Die Hard, and we talked about some of these other things, Predator, obviously, and so forth, with Predator being the founding film, really, a lot of this. And JCVD always comes through in part of the discussion, but we've never centered a discussion on where Jean-Claude Van Damme fits in the pantheon of, say, action stars of the 80s, 90s. Do we call it the late 20th century? Dare we? It feels weird, but it's probably accurate. Where's Van Damme in the pantheon? Go ahead, John Wyatt.
I don't like the late 20th century designation. That makes me feel unfortunately old.
We're approaching 50, pal. It's happening. So
I'm already 50, I'm afraid.
Yeah. That's why you're drinking.
So okay. I'm approaching it from the other direction.
Rob, you and I are approaching 50.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, he falls in sort of the second tier, right? Like you've pretty closely got in the sort of 80s and early 90s, you've got Schwarzenegger and you've got Stallone, and then like below them, you've got the Dolph Lundgren, Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme sort of layer of folks. And you know, I think part of that you can see in the feuds between them, right? Like the Stallone isn't beefing with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He didn't care. He's not a threat. He's
that's a good point.
So it's Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme that have beef for years, right? Like for like a decade, they go back and forth at each other. And you know, I think they see each other as their own competition, as like, you know, the next tier down.
Isn't that just because they're trying to get to that first tier? And I think maybe Willis as well in that first tier.
Yeah.
In a different kind of way. But I think there's three dudes in the 80s and 90s.
Right. And Willis is real interesting, right? Because he's not sort of obvious. He's not like strong or
my analogy
martial
on
arts.
this.
He's
Odysseus.
somebody's dad. Yeah,
he's Odysseus, man.
Okay, yeah.
Willis is Odysseus to Schwarzenegger's Achilles. You know, Willis gets there in a different way, but he's still on the pantheon. Rob, what do you think?
Well, I think what makes the conversation about the pantheon interesting in the 1990s is that, as we've talked about before in the pod, action movies in the 90s are really undergoing this interesting evolution where at a certain point, by 94, 95, if you're going to take a lens out from Timecop, you've got films like True Lies, Last Action Hero, Die Hard with a Vengeance comes out the following year. You've got some of Stallone's Cliffhanger came out the year before this. And I think there's this point where the action genre had, by the early 1990s, was in a place where the blockbusters weren't quite blockbustering like they used to. They were still big movies. Like, they were still event films, right? This is only 3 years after Terminator 2, for example. But there is a real sense with that new pantheon of Hollywood's trying to find the next big actor who's going to kind of take the reins. And if we're thinking about it, no one ever really does. They just all kind of fall into these different pantheons, but no one ever takes the reins from a Schwarzenegger or a Stallone or even a Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I think this is as close as they get, frankly. I think that Timecop is the best and close. Like, Timecop could have been a Schwarzenegger Stallone film if it had been set, if it had been made a decade earlier or 6 years earlier or something like that. I feel like this is as close as they ever got. This and maybe Under Siege to getting to that first pantheon of films. And it's like Van Damme gets there and tastes it for a moment, and I don't know what happens afterwards because he had the look. This movie did well. I don't know if it was like script choices. He doesn't seem to be as likable as a person. I do think audiences do care about who they watch. They clearly root for actors and actresses.
Can I just say, I think with that point about Van Damme, as I was watching Timecop again, I never really got that same kind of charisma off the screen that you got off of, say, a Schwarzenegger or even a Stallone. Because I think with Schwarzenegger, there is a charisma of this guy's not only strong, but you just, whenever he's on screen, you want to see what he does next. Stallone has, while he's a big buff dude, he also has sort of the everyman kind of persona going at times. With Van Damme, it's more of, okay, this guy's a great martial artist. He is a handsome man. He's obviously Belgian, all that. I am supposed to root for him, but I'm not invested in him winning the same way I would say Stallone or Schwarzenegger, or especially Bruce Willis, who, again, we were just saying, is just like a dude thrown into extraordinary circumstances in most of his films. Van Damme is more like, we hope he wins, but
Can I enter one more person real fast? We need to have this conversation. We never do. Mel Gibson. It's got to be in this conversation.
Yes.
Sorry, keep going. I'm sorry, John Wyatt. I just wanted to say it before I forgot it.
No, and that's a fair point. As I'm sitting here listening to Rob talk, and it's really good points. One of the things I'm wondering is if it's maybe the martial arts is part of it. So first off, like, it's part of what makes him so fascinating, right? Is like, there are clearly like a number of scenes in this movie where they're like, this man can do a full set of splits and it's like uncanny looking, and we need to find ways to get that on screen. He's skilled and like talented and weird in that respect. But also, like, it's not American in the way that hitting somebody in the face is, just like a brute, like Rocky is just like, I'm going to stand in the ring and you're going to hit me in the head and I'm going to hit you in the head, and we're going to see who falls down first and who falls down last. Like, that's American, damn it. Like, and the Jean-Claude Van Damme, aside from, I would agree with Rob, I don't think he quite exudes the same charisma, but also the way that he, like, the strength that he brings to the film, the martial arts, which is really cool to watch, is also a little alienating, maybe. Like, it's othering in some respects.
Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe, like you're saying, that there's a sense that martial arts films are almost B films, and therefore we conceptualize them as being B movies. Like, because we talk about these great, these fun movies we all grew up watching. And we got to do Last Dragon on this pod. How do we not talk about Bruce Leroy? at some point in time. Who I didn't even get the name when I was a kid. I was like, oh, his name's Bruce Leroy. That's cool. Because I was 6. I want to get into this film and start playing around with some of the ideas here. 2 of you are 3 of us are historians. We all have we have 3 letters behind our names. Timecop imagines a world in which time travel exists, but it's regulated by the government. Does anything about that as historians strike you as interesting or ridiculous? Could the federal government ever actually manage time travel?
It's a hard time with air travel, man.
Don't say that. I've got to fly on Saturday.
I think when I was watching it, I remember thinking to myself, what if Timecop was made today? And I think if it was being made right now, I think the story would be less about the government trying to regulate time and more about the government trying to use time travel for its own ends. Because in the film, the whole idea behind I think that's the Time Enforcement Corporation,
Commission.
The whole idea is they're trying to make sure other nefarious forces don't use time travel for certain ends. But then the question becomes, well, who are they trying to stop from using this, right? In the film, It's somebody trying to run for president, trying to manipulate an election by getting money from different points in the past.
But there are also other bad actors that are just kind of hinted at. There's like an Iranian death squad and some other people.
Right. So the question becomes, is this a question of time travel proliferation in like between 94 and 2004? Would the government really just regulate it, or would they try to say, hey, we could go back and give previous leaders information about things that are coming up? There's the temptation. I know the movie has a scene where they explain why you shouldn't do that.
Right.
But
shouldn't and will are really different things.
But isn't this a reflection of a Clintonian idealized version of government where government is good? And the idea is that, one of the big parts here is the fact that, like, is that you've got a rogue senator who is threatening to make government bad, right? By ascending to the White House and stuff like that. It's one of the things that's really pointed at. It's like, wait, it's like, no, federal regulation is good, and we're all joking around how much money is going to cost, but we're going to do it because we're in it for the right things. That's a very Clinton-esque understanding of government in the early 90s.
It's also sort of the 80s and 90s, like America's policeman of the world kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But yeah, it sort of leans heavily on the pillar of government being a force for good, in a way that in this particular moment right now we might not agree with. I mean, there's a number of things watching this for the first time that sort of struck me as sort of funny about this.
Mm-hmm.
Not the least of which is like they tapped the commissioner of the District of Columbia, the DC police force, to lead this super secret government organization. And like, I've watched The Wire, man.
First of all, there will be no Bruce McGill slander on this podcast, sir.
Well,
because I'm a fan.
He's great. It's not him. It's like you wouldn't tap that guy to lead. This is the
time
organization.
that they're Marion Barry having a bitch set me up. Like DC was not having.
No,
it was the best moment. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that was my very first Marion Barry impression. So there you go. Rob just died. So,
but I mean, well, and by the way, I got to mention being a Star Trek fan. In Star Trek Voyager, Bruce McGill actually plays a member of Starfleet's like time travel enforcement agency in the far future, who actually gets caught trying to change history in Voyager's past. I forget which season it's in, but he actually plays a character. And I watched Timecop. I forgot he was in Timecop, and I'm like, he kind of does this again as a villain in Star Trek Voyager.
You better be very careful, because anytime you start bringing up Star Trek Voyager, Eric Liddard lives about 90 minutes away from me. He's going to show up and saying how much he hates Chakotay. So I'm just saying, be careful, sir.
That's neither here nor there. But to John's point, I think we just mentioned The West Wing, right? Also, The American President comes out a year after this.
Mm-hmm.
There's this, and Dave, I think, came out a year or two before this. So there's this real sense in American popular culture of the government. If the right people are in positions of power, the government can do good things for the average person. And you tie that with, and I know everyone, all your listeners who are historians of the Cold War era are going to roll their eyes at the same time. This is also the era of the so-called end of history, where there's this real optimism after the end of the Cold War about what America can do and what it can accomplish. I think Timecop kind of embodies all those disparate threads.
No, I thought that too, because among other things, right, like as in that perspective, right, America has come out victorious at the end of the Cold War, right? We've come to the end of history. We've won. It's great. Like, you need to protect that particular past. Like, you can't let people go back and start messing with the way that the Cold War worked out, because like we came out on top and we need to keep that. So I think there's at least part of that going on too.
I want to point to two things. First and foremost, people who are going to be studying this podcast in the future are suddenly going to become to the realization that the three of us have arrived at a very important point, which is that the four most pro-governmental films in recent American history are The West Wing, Dave, The American President, and Timecop. So
it's the Mount Rushmore of
yeah, somewhere on there. And Martin Sheen gets to be on there a couple of times. So there's that. But this brings us to another point here, John Wyatt, and that you started to get to, right? Which is the idea like of American history, and the TEC exists to keep people from messing with American history and things like that. So thinking as historians, gentlemen, if people had that power to go back and change American history, well, let's keep it to American history for now, because we're not very big in Belgium. What would they change? What moments in time would they change?
So I'll start, and Rob's about to jump in, but I'm going to beat him to the punch with just a second here. I will start by saying that we are all three historians. That is exactly a thing that we do. That we go back into the past, into archives, and we rewrite the way that the present understands the past.
You're going to get us canceled.
Yeah, but it is like, that's the historian's job, right? Which is one of the fascinating things for me about watching this movie and you think about like current debates about destroying monuments and the dangers of rewriting the past. When all three of us know that, like, no, that's the thing that we do. Like, rewriting the past is just a really sort of hot button way of saying, like, we learn more and we sort of build on the knowledge that we have, and we rethink the way that the past affects who we are and what we're doing and how we go forward. So I would say that, like, we do that all the time. And not just historians, but like everybody does that. We rethink, we reassess the past that we have lived personally, and we retell stories, and we build on narratives, personal and family and regional. It's a thing that we all do. And so it's really fascinating to see in this movie the way it gets like encapsulated into this very particular idea of like how you do it, like in terms of like physically going back into the past, and how we really need to stop that. So I'd start by saying that people do it all the time, and historians do it professionally.
Well, I love that answer from John, because he's absolutely on point with that. But I would come at this from a different angle. As both a historian and as someone who loves science fiction, I would probably be the first person to say I shouldn't change anything, because I don't know what's going to happen. But
wait, go ahead.
But if you were to ask me, okay, is there anything you would change?
Okay.
I think I would, right off the bat, I would try to figure out, how can I save Martin Luther King Jr.? That's the first thing I would think about, because I would think, again, his idea of a revolution of values is still desperately needed. But I would also acknowledge, if I did go back and save him, that changes so much about U.S. history.
Sure.
And at the same time, I would also be tempted, and this is not to be facetious with your question, but I think as a historian, I would say, well, I don't want to cause too much change, but I do want to make some change. I might think about, what kind of sporting events in the past could I change?
I have this for you. Are you ready?
Go ahead. Oh, I see the shirt you're wearing.
I'm just saying right now, Rob. Okay, Rick Pitino guards the inbound pass from Grant Hill to Christian Laettner in 1992. We defeat Duke in the Elite Eight, go on to defeat Indiana, and ultimately win the national title with the Unforgettables. I cried that night, Rob,
Well,
and I have to relive that every March. And
if I were to give a second serious answer, I think if I could make my way to Washington, D.C. in April 1865.
Absolutely.
And I would give Abraham, I would not only tell President Lincoln, which would be kind of weird for him to listen to me say, tell him this, but to say, hey, A, don't go to Ford's Theater. And B, I have a copy of this book by a guy named Eric Foner called Reconstruction. Take a look at it just for a moment and think about some of your ideas for your second term and disappear back into the shadows.
I actually asked Heather about this when she was on the pod. Like, what does Reconstruction look like with Lincoln? And that's one of the great, and how do we imagine Lincoln if he's not assassinated? What happens if we actually have 4 years of peacetime Lincoln? Like, we never got to see a peacetime Lincoln. How does that affect how we think about him? Because there's so many it complicates his legacy, certainly. Can I actually go off of that, Rob, as well? Because I was going to save this conversation for later, but actually I'm going to go to like 1876, and I'm going to talk about Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes, and I'm going to say that I keep that bargain from happening and that Reconstruction continues, because so much of what happens all the way until 2026 today is an absolute failure in the United States on the part of the federal government to continue Reconstruction, to finish off what Reconstruction started. Because 12 years to reset the racial prejudices in the United States? Are you kidding me? Like, we needed more. And the Garfield, like there are all these people we could have, Medgar Evers, right?
Right.
And lately, I'm sure you're seeing the news today, Cesar fucking Chavez, of all goddamn people. Are you shitting me? This has been a day for history. Yeah. All right, John, what do you think? What would you change if you could?
That's it. So my initial answer, especially if we're sort of thinking about American history, and I'm not an Americanist, so I have a little more limited knowledge. I would have also gone and like intercepted Lincoln on his way into the play and like, let's go get a coffee or something, man. But
hey, it's like, what?
I think if I'm thinking more broadly, so my first reaction to this question, honestly, is a little bit like Rob's. I don't think I would, left to my own devices, if I could choose, I don't think I would change anything. I think I would just like to see a bunch of stuff and better understand. This is the historian's impulse, though. Like, I think I would like to go back and watch events happening that I have read about and studied and see how I got it wrong, and where I got it right, but mostly how I got it wrong and how we sort of address that. This question sort of pokes at the idea that we love and that the film plays with, that history hinges on specific key moments and key people, and like that's a useful narrative device that works really well for the film. It's also, I think, I would say at least, it's not how I tend to think about history working generally, right? Like, and there are, of course, moments where you're like, if you could keep Lincoln from being assassinated, what does that look like? Does that really changes like so many different streams of history? But history changes and moves because of thousands and millions of people doing little things, and I'd kind of like to see that. If I had to pick something else, I might sort of go back to Christopher Columbus's sort of audience with the King, Queen of Spain. Be like, hey, okay, he's not wrong, although he's not right in the way that he thinks he is, but also send somebody else.
Boo this man.
Send somebody who is not a complete homicidal maniac.
Can I ask you another, maybe a different twist on this question, guys? You have the power of time travel, but you can only use it as a window. You can see anything. You could be witness to anything that happens without affecting it whatsoever. The Star Trek thing, the first What do we call it, Rob?
The Guardian Forever.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So here's my question. You can go back in time in American history. What do you see in person? Is there a moment that you would want to witness? I've got mine in front of me, but I want to wait.
I've actually thought about this question, and
Please.
I know exactly what it is. It's April 2nd or 3rd, 1865. It's Richmond, Virginia, and it's when the first federal soldiers entered the former capital of the Confederacy. Those soldiers were black, and they were greeted by formerly enslaved people. And there's pandemonium on the streets of Richmond. Everything's in ruins, but it's black soldiers and black families celebrating together in Richmond, Virginia at the end of the Civil War. That is what I want to see.
I love this answer. John Wyatt?
I can't beat that at all.
You're not trying to beat it. What do you like? This is just about you.
No.
Mine probably beats it. I'm just telling
you. Honestly, I would go back and look at some of my own family history that I don't understand as well as I would like, and sort of watch the way. So my grandfather ran one of the last foundries in the country in Chicago until it went out of business, and it went out of business in a somewhat spectacular way that included the CEO of the company stealing all of the proceeds and like all of the money from the company safe essentially, and like fleeing in an airplane and then crashing into a mountain. So like but I don't understand, like I know the bones of the family history, but I don't understand a lot of the underpinnings and the nuances of it, and like I would like to. So I think I would do that.
1973, Secretariat at the Belmont. That's all I need to see. In person. I want to be in the stands. And yes, Rob, I know that a horse I'm saying a horse overrode this beautiful story that you just told.
It's a nice pun, though, with the horse overriding it.
Goodness, right? It's so good. All right, I want to come back to Senator McComb, Ron Silver, and essentially he's trying to use time travel to, and this would never happen, rig an election and buy political power. So what does that say about the anxieties of politics in the early 1990s, and also are these people actually traveling forward in time to get ideas for movies in the early 1990s? Is this movie proof of a time travel device that I could maybe they were saying actually you can move? They were saying you could only move back in time to hide the fact that they were going forward in time the entire time.
Right, because that doesn't make any sense at all, right? It's like you can't go forward in time because the future hasn't happened yet. But like, if you send people back in time, like then that future hasn't happened yet either. So anyway,
Looper does this really well, actually, at the diner table. Mm-hmm. So, all right, Rob, what do you think?
I mean, I think, well, in fairness to the film's producers and writers, and let's not forget this is based off a Dark Horse comic series, which is I also forgot about too. But this is only about 20 years after Watergate, and it's less than 10 since Iran-Contra. And so I think there is this idea, even though we're just talking about how the film promotes, well, if there are good people in government, they can achieve good things. There's also this acknowledgement of, but if there are bad people in government, they might not be stopped. And I think with a film like this, the thing is, I will say with Timecop is that you got to give them credit for having such an epic level of corruption that involves literally the creation of time travel and trying to harness this new technology. At least that's a lot more understandable than we got duped by social media. Mm-hmm. It's like at least with time travel is like, okay, I hand it to them, they got us that time. But yeah, the corrupt politician thing I think is it's an interesting angle, in particular because Ron Silver plays two versions of the same guy, mm-hmm. which I think is really interesting. One who's like not quite corrupt, and the other one who's like all the way corrupt.
Oh, he's gone in, right?
Right.
Yeah, he's like kind of a weasel, the early version of him.
Yes.
And then you see the fullest expression of his own corruption later on, right? And that great line of how he clearly doesn't respect the early version. Will you lay off the fucking candy bars?
The other great line about him is right at the beginning of the film from the government advisor, who was like, "You'll like him. He's like you, but his dorsal fin isn't quite so big."
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciated that little bit of writing. So out of curiosity, are we sure that his character would have made a bad president?
No, actually.
Like there's actually like there's very little in here about policy or anything else. I mean, it's an action movie. You're not going to get that. But like, he's not in the white supremacist party. So there's that.
He's just in it for him.
He's just in it for him. Yes. So I don't know. It's like maybe like there's nothing. They have to introduce some actual like the bit where he assaults his advisor with the candy bowl, right? They have to make him comedically evil in order to skate around the fact that like I don't know, maybe he's not wrong about what he's doing.
Here's my question, Rob. You are an Americanist. How many good presidents have we ever had? Like actually, people who were actually good at the job.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking too. There's a question we could talk about, which is, which president could we imagine using this for their own nefarious ends to be elected or reelected, right? And I'm thinking of Richard Nixon will probably have done some of the same stuff if he needed to. But I think to your question about would he have been a good or bad president and thinking about presidents in general, I just think the fact that there is a white supremacist party that calls itself a white supremacist party and is apparently actually getting votes in 2004 is indicative, I think, of a much larger problem in the United States at that point. Because they also talk about, I think there's a brief mention of, I think I wrote this down, where they're talking about how there's a lot of anti-immigrant and foreigner sentiment in the country at that time. Again, we don't really see much of it in the film. It's just alluded to a couple of times. But it does give you a sense of Ron Silver's character trying to make clear that he's trying to restore the country to a place of greatness that it had before. And I am not going to make the joke that we're all thinking about right now. We're not going to use that slogan in this point of the show. But I do think you have an interesting point there of, are we sure we made a bad, as at least as president, we know he would have done whatever it took to stay in power if he had gotten there.
Right. Because like, as I guess part of what I was thinking is like, as far as we know, from the very little that we know about the sort of political orientation of 2004 America at that point, like you could make the argument that like he's doing everything he can, including breaking the law to go to the past to like make himself a ton of money in order to combat the rising tide of white nationalism and racism. I don't know. Like you could make that case for it.
And this gets back to the idea that villains consider themselves heroes. Very, very rarely people, it's like, no, I'm acting. It's like what I'm doing is bad, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. Right. Or like, yeah, I'm getting rich, but I'm also going to stop these now. Like,
although he does have that line where he says he wants to make things to where the top 10% have a low tax rate and everyone else can move to Mexico and have a good life.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Okay. Yeah. Well, all right.
But at least it's not the white supremacist party.
Yes.
Right.
The lesser of two evils, damn it.
we would hate to see an openly popular American president supported by white supremacists in the United States. So that would be a very bad thing.
We would.
All the people would agree that yes. Hey everyone, we're dancing tonight with Rob, Jason, and John Wyatt. All right, let me ask you this. So say there is a real TEC, a real-time enforcement commission, and you've got people who can, in fact, go back and police the past. Would historians be the ideal people? Who makes up this job? Who becomes a TEC officer?
Clearly, DC police officers. Seems to be where they're drawing most of their people from.
Because I'm thinking about people on Blue Sky right now. I'm like, I don't know that I've got a faith in their martial abilities right now. I'm going through my head right now going, okay.
I would actually use anthropologists.
Oh, I like this.
Here's why I say that, because many of them have more experience of actually living in different places around the world, being out of their comfort zone. I think historians would do well to be advisors for an organization like this, right? Because one thing I did not like about this film was how they would go back into the past and just wear these uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, you guys didn't at least think about wearing something to blend in with the past. Like, I get it. It's a B-level action movie kind of thing, so you're not supposed to put that much thought into it. But I couldn't help but put that much thought into it. For example, when Jean-Claude Van Damme goes to 1929 and fights some of the bad guys there, and he finds his former partner there, I'm thinking, it would have been nice if you just wore like a suit and tie just to blend in, as opposed to like these materials from the early 21st century. But I think historians, well, number one, I think most historians probably wouldn't do it if it was like a law enforcement role. They would do it if it was just observing the past, as John said. I think that'd be a different story. But I think in terms of actually going back in the past, living there, and saying trying to hunt somebody down, at the very least, you would have to have an apparatus where you would ask folks in the FBI, other federal agencies, let's get some folks who can get trained as historians, as anthropologists, and see what they can do.
That's a good point, because like part of, and we haven't really talked about this, but like part of the enforcement mechanism here is like they have a sort of instantaneous tribunal where you don't get a lawyer, and if they find you guilty in like 2 minutes, you're sentenced to death.
It's efficient.
It is efficient. I don't know a ton of academic historians that would be on board with being a party to that. And, I mean, we all know some of them and they have tenure, but like,
I feel confident in my judgment abilities, John Wyatt.
You could just call them dissertation committees.
Oh my God.
Fair point. Yeah.
I know of one
Here's your
professor.
snake.
I know of one professor who very much would have like enjoyed that, but he and I don't talk anymore.
But you take my point, right? I think
yeah.
I think Rob's point about like there are some serious sort of it's like what's the Bruce Willis movie about the asteroid and the
Armageddon.
Armageddon. Thank you. Yeah, it's like Armageddon, where like with a ridiculous premise, it's like, it's easier to train oil drillers to be astronauts than it is to train astronauts to be oil drillers. And it's like, no, I think in this case it goes the other way around. It's probably easier to train, like to hire historians to work with FBI agents and people like that to like bring them up to speed on a bunch of things than it is to like take a bunch of people out of like the history grad school programs and be like, all right, off to Quantico with you.
Are there other moments in this film that are hallmarks of the early 90s? I'm thinking one thing in particular, but I'm like, when you look at this film, Rob was just saying how it's, speaking as much to it's the moment in which it was made, but are there moments that date this film to the 1990s when you're like, this is early 90s? Like, what does it look like for you? I got a couple.
That's a good question. I was thinking, for one, some of the presence of some of the folks in the supporting cast, like Gloria Rubin, for example.
Oh yeah,
who
right.
I think most folks know her from ER and the like. And
was she having her Radon Chong moment in this film?
I think it is weird you say that, because in the film, when she first shows up, it's like, okay, it's going to be like sort of a buddy cop kind of thing. And then she makes a pseudo heel turn, but is like under duress. And then she might survive and be able to help him. And then she dies anyway. And then at the end, of course, she's alive. But I think, for example, having a woman who's like his partner at various points is, I hate to say like quintessential 80s, 90s, but again, it reminded me of Nancy Lewis and RoboCop, for example. But I also think things like the look of the cars, for example, and Van Damme getting into like the pseudo Tesla kind of thing that has
Did
AI.
Did you not notice the Tesla? What is it? The Cybertruck looking thing that they're driving? I mean, it is uncanny.
Right.
It is. And those cars drove me nuts until the very end of the movie, when I realized why they're designed the way they're designed. Not the look necessarily, but like the fact that there's no windows, and the fact that like you just tell them where they're self-driving. Right? Another Tesla dream is like the entire structure there of those cars is set up so that at the end of the film, when he like exhaustedly just tells the car to take him home, and it takes him like back to his home, so he doesn't get to see it through the window, and he doesn't have to drive. He just like gets out of his car and is like, my child, so he gets that stuff. Like the entire weirdness of the cars is, I think, like sort of reverse engineered to make that work at the end.
What is that conversation like? Like, you show up now at your house and you don't know the first 10 years of your kid's life. And does his wife know that today is the day that he comes back? Like, she's known him all the way up until now, but she knows that all of a sudden today he's going to come back with like memory loss and be completely weirded out by all of this.
Yeah, I sort of had that thought too. I was like, man, you're not going to be able to fake that with your kid for very long.
Here's my question.
Timecop to the comedy.
If you come across a random 10-year-old kid,
mm-hmm.
do you even love that child? Like, you've like, if you're a parent, sure, you've had 10 years with them. You've imprinted on them. They've bonded with them. Now someone's just telling you this is your kid. Now, like, what's that like? Like, how he's super happy to see his wife again, obviously.
Because he just found out like a couple hours before that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, and he had to speed run all that.
Like the work he's having to do intellectually, in addition to all of the things to keep track. Mm-hmm. I mean, can you imagine if Christopher Nolan did this film? I want to see Christopher Nolan do Timecop. That's what I want to see. Neither of you brought up his glorious mullet, and I'm a little ashamed of you both.
It is feathery and amazing.
It's pretty good, right?
I mean, it is the ultimate 1990s look.
It's actually pretty good, and it looks a lot like the mullet he's rocking in Cyborg. I'm just saying. I don't know what Cyborg is.
It reminded me a lot of Patrick Swayze's hair in Roadhouse.
Yeah, there's another Swayze film that I'm dying to do. What was it called? It was called Steel Dawn. Do you know this film?
Oh, that sounds
You guys
familiar.
need to look this up. Steel Dawn, Rob. I'm telling you, we need to do a whole series of B films on this podcast. It's like post-apocalyptic film. Post-apocalyptic film. Patrick Swayze has a sword. Go.
Oh, sweet. Historians of the movies B-sides. While Rob's doing that, I will say that, like, you asked about moments or things in the film that make it feel 80s and 90s, and you had both spoken earlier about how the lead actress has a substantial role. I actually felt that she was primarily there to be a damsel in distress. Like,
in this one,
I did. Yeah, I did not see and this felt like one of those moments where like most of her appearances in here felt like she's there to provide motivation for Van Damme.
I don't know, man. I feel like towards the end, when they meet back up at the mall and he has that exposition about being from the future and all stuff, and like, I need you to believe and stuff like that, she's in on it from then on. And she's like helping fight the bad guys from the time that he sees her again at the mall and he explains to her, and she's buying in. I feel like she's actually doing more than we typically let on, because from there on in all the way to the scene in the house, like I feel like she's because she kind of replaces Gloria Reuben as his partner in some ways as far as the action.
She does, but like all of her action is directed by him. He's the one who's like, okay, like, keep him upstairs, like, do this, do that, like, okay. And then like the last, like, a lot of the climactic scene of the movie is her like trying, for some ungodly reason, trying to climb up onto the roof of their house in the middle of a lightning storm.
Okay, that was a little weird.
And and then sliding down and getting stuck on like the world's strongest gutter.
Well, what happens was she was trying to reset the clock in Hill Valley, so they could all go back to 1955 and prevent Senator McComb from being born.
That would work.
See,
and she does get the satisfaction of shooting the guy, and that worked out well. But like, I don't know, most of her appearance in that film it feels like it's there to be a sort of damsel in distress. And like, you both talked a little bit about the scene where he goes home and he's rewatching the video of her, right? But like, he's rewatching a video of him correcting her and her like taking on a hard task and then not being able to do it. And like, then he comes over and he's, the lines that he's repeating, and it's sweet in its way, but the lines he's repeating are the lines where he's like, oh, baby, maybe you should try something easier next time, you know? Like,
wait a second. Maybe he and Senator McComb both want to restore 80s era misogynies. And it turns out that that's actually the great tragedy is that they end up fighting one another. Please, could you listen to this podcast? This was all
I don't know. It just like that's what we see that he remember. He goes home and he plays this tape again and again and again of him mansplaining to her how to build a birdhouse.
Thank you, John, for ruining all of the movie.
It's what I'm here for.
I was literally going to say one event. I was going to ask you in a lightning round. One event you'd be tempted to tweak just a little bit, and one would be like, don't ask John Wyatt what he feels about women in this town. Actually, I want to give you guys.
I wanted her to have more. I wanted her to have more to do.
Now I'm like, okay, so this movie is actually doing a lot. It's got some failings though, right? Like you're pointing out there. Like I feel like this is not a fully actualized film because so maybe Mia Sara's character doesn't have as much, and there's some stuff here, but I do feel like it's kind of starting to trying to move the bar forward at least a little bit intellectually. I want to ask you guys some lightning round questions because I briefed typically. So if you're listening in right now, typically I try to give everybody some talking points to think about before we do the pod. This is not like a gotcha podcast or anything like that. I want people to kind of know what to expect and be thinking about stuff so you can give good answers. Until now. So let's go. Best time travel movie, gentlemen. What do you got? Well, and you give me your 4 if you want. We'll go Rushmore on this, but what do you got? Your best time travel films.
Okay. Well, I'll start with Back to the Future, the first one.
Yeah, I don't like the second two.
No. Also, the Back to the Future is a movie that I watched I don't know how many times in German because it was like the one German tape that my junior high school had. And every time there was a substitute teacher, it's what we watched.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but that is a good movie. And the other ones are like, eh.
Rob, what do you got?
So I guess for me, I would go with, I guess this is the obvious answer, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, where, again, it's very much a movie of its time, the late 1980s. It really kind of gets into that sort of fish out of water storyline. But I also want to nominate Time After Time from 1979.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite films. It's essentially the whole premise, if you've not seen it, is that H.G. Wells chases Jack the Ripper to the future, to 1970 San Francisco. And you have, I think it's David Warner playing Jack the Ripper and Malcolm McDowell as H.G. Wells. And it's an interesting film because it also gets into how people like Wells, who were utopians, how they were actually seeing the future they were hoping to envision, and were like, "Wait, this is it? This is what's going to happen." But it's a fun film. I actually like Back to the Future Part 2 for various reasons, but I think those are my big time travel films. And then I would also add Star Trek: First Contact, which. Okay. Is a time travel film, albeit all of it set in the future, but it's also going to John's earlier point about seeing something you want to see in the past, you want to witness. That film is about people in Starfleet seeing the first human warp flight in history. But they meet their hero, Zefram Cochrane, and they're like, oh, this guy is not what we thought he was. And that actually makes him more heroic in some ways. So it's a time travel film that's really about how do we narrate history and historical narratives, and what happens when we have to change those narratives when we get more information about the people we're studying.
Okay, so you asked for a couple of different ones. I would, having sat here and had the opportunity to think while Rob was talking, I would say the Muppets Christmas Carol.
Okay.
Which is for me like the sort of best of the Christmas Carol movies, but like that, the Christmas Carol generally is a time travel piece, right? Like it's Scrooge going backwards and forwards in time, and if it's interesting to sort of think about it in terms of the Timecop structure, right? Because like it's sort of saying like, well, actually, the present is the past for the future, and like making changes in your daily life is in fact making changes in history. And so I don't know. I think that's a sort of interesting idea to play around with.
All right. I want to give you guys some other options here. You ready? 12 Monkeys.
Oh, I forgot about that. That is such a good movie. It's Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's really good. We've done here on the pod. Here's another one for you. Ready? Planet of the Apes. Also a time travel film. Think about it. He's out in space, comes back. Time has moved on significantly. Edge of Tomorrow plays around with time travel, just like Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah,
okay, with the time manipulation. Tenet. Still don't understand it. I love watching the movie. I do not understand Tenet. I haven't figured it out. It's all right. You didn't see this movie till like we'll ask you next time. And next time we're actually, John, what we're gonna do next time is ask you to come back on the pod for a film you still have yet to see and just give us your thoughts. See if you can just like
so it'll be like my own Christmas Carol, like the movies of
okay,
movies that I've yet to see, movies of the past, movies of the present. Yeah,
I want to give you two more. Army of Darkness.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And finally, Hot Tub Time Machine. So all of these are wins in my book. One event, gentlemen, one and one only, that you would absolutely forbid anyone from changing.
Now you've just got dead air. Well, there's this moment where Grant Hill makes this fantastic pass to Christian Laettner.
Let's decide that. We'll get you banned, sir.
Well, I think if there was one for me, it might have to be, and again, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but making sure the I Have a Dream speech actually happens. Like, just do not mess with that, because it's such an important moment in American and world history in terms of rhetoric, in terms of what it represents. I think maybe behind that, Lincoln's second inaugural as well. He has to give it exactly the way he gives it. I think that the difficulty I have with that question is, in terms of what one event I would protect, it's kind of hard to say there's just one particular event, because so many events in just U.S. history and world history, generally speaking, are building up on other events. But I think those are the two. If it was sports, I would definitely have to say, please just do not mess with the 2 World Series the Atlanta Braves won. Just let me have those, please.
It's all right. Can we keep the 96 World Series?
John, what's your answer to this?
I'm a medievalist by training. I think I would say the Norman invasion of England in 1066, because I was trying to think of like sort of moments that cascade in like so many different directions that if you changed it, that I would not at all recognize. There's a good chance I wouldn't at all recognize the world that I live in today. And like, for all that, on a day-to-day basis, it feels often very much like the dog in the room on fire saying this is fine. I kind of like the world I live in a lot of ways. And so that's a moment where like, if like that drastically changes like the political realignments in Europe, and like the way that European medieval history unfolds from that point forward, like that's a real sharp pivot in a lot of ways. And I think I would prefer just to leave that alone. And like, it has lots of negative side effects. You can point like to centuries and centuries of problems that come from the Norman conquest. I think though I would prefer that it stayed, because I kind of like the history that follows from it generally.
All right. Last lightning question for you. The Jean-Claude Van Damme roundhouse kick, historically significant or historically ridiculous?
Yes.
That's fair.
I think it's both.
Final answer.
Well, but I think it's also kind of like going back to the earlier point that both you and John made about him being a martial arts star, right? It is genuinely impressive to see that roundhouse kick in the film, just on the merits of that alone. In this film, it feels especially ridiculous when there's that scene in the mall where he stops a robber by almost kicking him, but like stopping at the last second. And I thought, okay, that's kind of over the top, but it is cool at the same time. And that's what action movies are about. Over the top, but cool at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Like that's another one of the scenes where like, okay, this guy can do this kick and hold this pose for like 2 minutes and nobody else in the world can do that, or, like not many people. And so like, let's highlight that. Let's find a way to highlight that with the world's oldest roller skating purse snatcher. Because that dude was supposed to be a teenager and he was like 42.
Yeah. All right. Final question here, guys. Timecop, terrible history film or Does it actually raise some surprisingly good questions?
It felt like a film. It's not the best history in the world, but it's not the worst either. Because I think it again points to how things like economics, political power, all these elements have really played a major role in American history. I think, if anything, it felt like a missed opportunity at times, because when I'm watching this film, I'm thinking, man, like, what other moments in history could they have gone back to? They had a Timecop TV show that lasted for like 9 episodes. Nobody watched it. But I think it's actually, compared to other films, it's not the worst history in the world. In fact, I think I hate they're so stuck in the 1990s in the film, because I wanted to see more of the past.
I think a Timecop series would be really good right now. I would be down for like a Netflix Timecop or a Amazon Prime Timecop, whoever. Give me 6 episodes to see what they could do with it. I'd be down for that.
So I think it's a bad historical movie. And like I take your point, Rob. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about the fact that like people and historians particularly rewrite the past all the time. And I think I don't like about it, the movie, is it reifies and reinforces the idea that like we shouldn't do that. That the past is needs to be a fixed timeline that gets us to a particular moment here, because this right now, the way we understand the present and the way that we understand the past is the ideal. And like, I have real problems with that. And I don't like the fact that the movie sort of takes that as a given and then sort of presents it to the audience as like, this is the way you need to think about the past. Like it is a hallowed space that we can't delve into and understand. It is sacred in some ways that like you just don't fuck with, man. And like, I have real problems with that. So I would say that like it's a fun movie, like if I'm trying to think about it. And it we've been talking about it here for an hour and a half. You can poke at it in ways that like really make you think, and that's great. But like the sort of surface level message that's getting across the audience is one that I think is sort of historically problematic.
All right, gentlemen, we've been talking about the past and time travel for now an hour and a half. I have one last final question for you. Whatever. Imagine the future. What film do you want to do next, each of you, on this podcast? What comes next for Rob Greene II? What comes next for John Wyatt Greenlee? What movie are you dying to talk about next on this pod?
Well, I'm still waiting to do Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So
I'm down.
There's that.
Okay.
But in like I love the idea of doing like B-list movies, and so I would throw Gymkata into the mix if we're thinking about like martial arts movies. I'd say Gymkata. I want to do Gymkata.
Can we just do a B-list film episode where we just rank through like our best moments of B films?
Yes,
that could be fun too.
I say yes. It's your podcast, but yes.
Oh yeah, I forgot. All right, good talk. Rob, what about you?
Well,
what are we doing?
I think for me, it would have to be. I just mentioned the Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
I got you booked for that, like with Kelsey Johnson, who is an astrophysicist. Like, you tell me when. She's ready to go on that one.
Yeah, I'm ready as well. Whenever you are.
All right, that's good, because I think she's coming on to do the Project Hail Mary.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
She's awesome. She's an astrophysicist, and it's brilliant because she's a real PhD. What? Her stuff's hard, and she draws pictures of turtles in her book. She's awesome. So good. All right, Star Trek IV: Voyage Home. We're down. We'll just do it. Okay, lots of stuff, guys. Dudes, thank you both for being here. I saw this thing and I was like, let's do a pod. So thank you both for taking the time to do this tonight. This was a lot of fun. Welcome back, gentlemen. We're back to our old stuff.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot. I really enjoyed this.
This was fantastic. Thank you for having me again.
You guys are both awesome. All right, guys. We'll see you in the future. I know. Everybody, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being here. If you like the pod, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave us a comment, a good one, on Apple or Spotify. Leave us some high ratings. It'll help us spread the word. Share this pod on social media. Hit that click button. Hit that share button on Blue Sky or Instagram or wherever the hell you found this. Thank you so much to our guests, John Wyatt Greenlee and Robert Greene II, for being here. Thank you to my partner in time and crime, Fletcher Powell, for making sure that he produces the show. And thank you to all of you for continuing to be here and be part of this thing we're building. We've got so many episodes coming for you. I'm throwing these things at Fletcher at this point in time, so stick around. Ciao for now.
Bye.